Alright guys, so today I'm going to walk you through one of my favorite lures setups for catching kokanee salmon and also for catching trout like rainbow and cutthroat. This has been really effective for me, and I hope you guys give it a try. To start out with, I'm going to teach you how to make a spinner, something like this, or these squids, or sometimes they're referred to as hoochies. And these are really simple to set up and make, and like I said, they're really effective on trout species and especially kokanee salmon. To get started, you're going to need a few supplies. One of these is a bead kit. I got this off of Cabela's website. It was $9 and it has thousands of beads and it has a couple different sizes. So if you want to make like a wedding ring style lure with tapered beads, you can do that with this setup. Also, for hooks, I like the Gamakatsu Octopus size 4, and you can see the style number up here on the top. So those have worked out really well for me. Also, you're going to need just some regular monofilament, or if you opt to, some guys really like the fluorocarbon lines for this. They claim that it gives a little bit more action to the lure, and it's got some other advantages to it as well, but this has worked well enough for me. I rig them with 8-pound monofilament. And then you can go to the store and you can pick up some squid skirts, or hoochies as they're sometimes referred to. And this is a pack of 8. I think it cost me $2. As you can see, I've used a few out of there already. And this is really cost effective to buy them like this and then rig them yourself, because as mentioned, if you go to the store, you're going to pay somewhere around $3 or better for one of these, and sooner or later, if you're catching enough fish, you're going to end up losing a hook off of this double hook setup. And so what I'm about to teach you will allow you to make your own, but more importantly, you can fix these if something goes wrong and continue to fish. So the finished product, when you're all done, is going to look something like this. You'll fish these lures behind a dodger, and this will impart a lot of action to your lure. And like I say, you're going to fish this setup right behind that dodger, and you can fish it anywhere from 8 inches to 12 to 15 inches or further. Just know that the closer you get this squid to this dodger, it's going to impart more action to your lure. So as this dodger is coming through the water column, being trolled behind your boat, it's going to sway back and forth like this, and as such, it's going to impart that same action to this lure. So you can imagine the closer that this gets to that dodger, the more action it's going to have. The further away from the dodger, the less action it's going to have. And sometimes you have to play with that and see what exactly is working that day for the fish. Okay, so now we're going to teach you the knot that you need to know, and you're basically just going to do this knot twice. And to show you how to do the knot, I thought it might be helpful to visualize it on something a little bit bigger. So I've got this cleaning handle here and some paracord, and the first step to this is you're going to take what would be your fishing line and you're going to send it down through the eyelet of your hook, right? We're just pretending at this point. And then you'll want to pinch that line up against the shank of your hook, and then you begin to wrap, and you'll wrap this 6 or 7 times, okay? And as you wrap, after you've wrapped 6 or 7 times, then you'll come back down through, and if you've pinched that line up against the shank of your hook, you'll come back through that loop there, and then you can pull tight on this end and this end, and it would slide. If this was a real hook, it would slide up here, and you could tighten this up really nicely. So just to show you that one more time again with this, and then we'll go to the real thing, you would send your line down through the eyelet of the hook, pull it through, and you want to pull enough through because keep in mind you're going to be tying another knot, so it's better to pull a little bit more through until you kind of learn how to get the hang of it and judge it a little bit better. So you pull the line through, you pinch it against the shank of the hook, you then begin to wrap. Again, you'll wrap that 6 or 7 times, and then you'll come back through that loop that was made by you pinching the line to the shank of the hook. And as you pull both ends of this tight, Again, if this was a real hook, it would slide up nicely right there. And just to note, when you wrap this, make sure that you're wrapping in a consistent manner so that line is being laid down progressively further towards the eyelet of the hook. You don't want to wrap over a loop that you've already wrapped, if that makes sense. So let's give it a shot with line and a real hook. Alright, so again, I've got my 8-pound monofilament here. I'm going to pull off about 3 feet of this just because it's better to use a little bit more and give yourself a little bit more room to start with, and then once you get a little bit better, like I say, you can learn to judge it a little bit better. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hook and I'm going to go down through that eyelet and I'm going to pull enough through, probably about 8 inches or so, because I'm going to tie 2 knots with this and make that second hook trail just behind the first. So again, I'm going to pinch this hook, pinch the line right against the shank of the hook. Okay, and you got to leave yourself enough room because you're going to be wrapping towards the eyelet. So now I'm going to wrap once, twice, 3 times. Again, you're going to do this about 6 or 7 times. Okay, and then it kind of helps to switch hands and pinch your wraps, and then I don't know if you can see that, but that exposes that loop right there. So now you can take your line and send it through that loop. Okay, and now you can pull both ends, and that tightens up really nicely up towards the eyelet of that hook. And you can see I've still got about 6 inches here to work with for my second hook. So let's go ahead and tie that on now. This is the hardest part, guys, is learning to judge the spacing for this second hook, but it's not too tough. So go down through that eyelet. You want to take this pretty close. Ideally, you want them to end up about that far apart. That's about 1 centimeter or so in between these 2 hooks. And in order to do that, keep in mind that you're going to be pulling this tight. So you don't want to start there. You want to start with a little less, actually. So again, you're going to pinch this line against the shank of the hook, and now you're going to wrap. Wrap once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and 6. Okay, you can then pinch your wraps with your index finger and your thumb. Okay, and now you've got a loop here, and you can take that tag end up through the loop and pull this tight. So you can see we've ended up, you know, that might be a little bit long, but it's not too bad really. So with those tight, we'll show you the next step. I've taken a squid just out of the package here, and I've also taken a few beads. About 4 or 5 is all you'll need for this. And these, if you look at this end, it's not actually open for your line to pass through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tip of that off, being careful not to take too much, because if you take too much, this is a conical shape, so if you cut further back here, you're going to have a big gaping wide hole at the mouth of this squid. You don't want that. So I've cut this, and I don't know if you can see that really well, but I have just about a 1mm hole for that line to pass through. So this is kind of a tricky part here, but if we thread this, and again you'll want to go up, I almost made the mistake to go the wrong way. If you can get this to go up through the skirt end, you'll notice that I'm going to run into a problem really quick here. If I pull that all the way up, you'll notice that my hook is now sitting really close to the front of this hook, and oftentimes when I've caught fish, I've hooked them up actually more on this back hook. And so you kind of want to let this trail a little bit further back, and the way we do that is we use beads to space it. So you kind of have to play around with this a little bit. It might take 4, it might take 5, who knows, but we're going to try with 4 and see where that puts us. So I'm just threading those on the line now. One thing I forgot to mention is these squids from P-line, they're just a little bit longer than I usually like to fish them. So what I'll do is I'll take these little ends and I'll cut maybe a centimeter or so off. Leaves kind of a mess. You can do that over the garbage can. But that's about the length that I like them, really, somewhere about 2 inches. So I threaded some beads on our monofilament here, and so far this is what we've got, and we're going to thread our line back through this squid. So now you can see that first hook lands somewhere closer to the mid body of the squid, and that second hook really isn't even in the body of the squid. It's hanging out the back, and ideally that has worked well for me. You can choose to do it another way if you'd like, but I've really had a lot of good success with that. And if you're trolling for salmon, kokanee, or trout, a lot of guys will end up tipping this with something. If your state's allowed to tip you with corn, scented corn, a lot of people will do that, and it's really effective. So we'll cut off this tag end right here, and we'll show you what to do next. One thing to note is when you cut off this tag end on your trailing hook, you don't want to cut it so close to your knot that it could come undone. So leave yourself about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, and that's okay. That's not going to be a problem for us at all. You can leave a little bit of line hanging out the end. And when I go to finish these knots, what I like to do is put a little bit of head cement over each knot, and that will really just kind of give that a barrier against teeth of the fish, and it seems to hold up really nice and last a lot longer. So we'll just dab some of this head cement on. Dab some head cement on. Doesn't take a whole lot, and you can go ahead and let that dry up. And one last thing that we'll show you is if you want to improve the aerodynamics of this squid a little bit, you can put a bead on the front because you have cut this nose of the squid. So if you want to put a bead on the front of this, that wouldn't be a bad idea. And then another option you can do is some people will actually install a clevis and a spinner, and they'll run a spinner blade right in front of this, which is another good option as well. And then once you're done with all those add-ons, you can just tie this into a barrel swivel, and that barrel swivel can then be hooked right into the tail end of your dodger. So this makes it really quick to change lures and go from one lure to another lure very quickly. I like to use this Lindy rig wrap. It seemed to work really nice for me for storing my snelled rigs, and that way they're not getting tangled all up and riding around in your tackle box haphazardly. So this is a really good way. You don't have to buy the Lindy ones. A lot of different companies make those, but that's a really good way to store your snelled rigs. Now if you want to make a spinner, you're just going to follow the same exact process that we did. However, you're just going to use a few more beads, and that's where this bead kit comes in really handy. And like I say, you can kind of taper some of those beads, and you can make your own wedding ring style lure. You can buy your spinner blades and clevises from Max Lures, the people who actually make the wedding ring. Or if you want to, you can purchase those things through Cabela's. They offer spinner blades and clevises as well. So if you have questions, go ahead and post them in the comments. Otherwise, happy fishing. This is a really effective setup for kokanee salmon and trout, and I'm excited to hear how it works for the rest of you.